Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Welcome to another edition of the Excel Leadership Network Leading Conversations podcast. For this episode, I am very excited to have the great, the wonderful, the amazing Harry Kelm with us all the way from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Harry, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here, JD.
What's the temp in Edmonton these days?
It is currently below freezing. We're expecting 5 to 10 centimeters of snow today. I always say that March and April in Alberta is like winter and spring having a bare knuckle fight. And one day spring seems to be winning, the next day winter seems to be winning. So we're in a winter trend right now, but it'll be nicer come the weekend.
Well, I admire people like you who can live in that climate. It just means you're a strong person. I grew up in Southern California. I'm such a weather wimp. Lived in Denver, and when we got to March and April in Colorado, I was ready for hey, it's springtime, it's beach time, and like you said, it's winter one day, spring the next.
Yeah.
Tell us one great thing about Edmonton. Sell Edmonton to us.
Well, for myself and my wife, Edmonton is the place where our grandkids live. And so when I had the opportunity of taking my current position, they said I could live anywhere I wanted as long as there was an NAB, North American Baptist Conference hub there. And Edmonton was where my son and daughter-in-law and kids lived. It's the capital city of Alberta, so it has all the provincial grounds, a lot of beautiful stuff to walk around there. It's got the river going right through it, so a lot of walking paths along the river. But it's primarily where my grandkids live. So that was the draw.
It's a beautiful city. It actually reminds me a lot of Sacramento, just with the river and kind of a mid-sized, large city. My son-in-law is from there. He's a huge Oilers fan as well. Are you a hockey fan?
Yeah, I am not a hockey fan. I came to Canada relatively later in life, and so I never played hockey. I never really watched hockey growing up. We moved our son, who was in grade 10, when we came up to pastor a church in Calgary, right south of Edmonton, about 3 hours, and he bought a video game. And he learned hockey by playing video games. He learned the names, he learned the rules. And I thought to myself, man, that's the way the next generation, gets a chance to figure out if they like a sport or not. They play it on a video game and see if they like it. There
you go. Well, I hope you can maneuver living in Edmonton and not being a gigantic Oilers backer. So. Hey, let's start with the beginning. Tell us how you came to Christ growing up.
Yeah, I'm actually the middle son of immigrants. My mom and dad came from Germany in the later 50s, and all of us boys were born there's 3 of us, in the United States. I was born in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They had gone through all that stuff with World War II, and they were wanting to come to North America to start over, lost a lot of family members. And so they chose Milwaukee because it was a German community, and there was a German church there. And so that was a North American Baptist Conference church. And that's how their journey, and actually my journey with the North American Baptist Conference started. The church family was our family. I called people uncle and aunt. Now, granted, JD, I have to say that German was spoken in the worship services. Everything was in German, so we didn't see a lot of newcomers. because it was pretty much just German. But I felt very encouraged, very supported. I had a big extended family, and that was my growing up. And it was when I was fairly young, I came to know Christ as my Savior. And I have to admit, when I look back, it was primarily more of a sense that I wanted to be in. I wanted to be a part of this family that I was growing up in, and I understood that to be a Christian meant that Jesus saved me from my sins, and I knew that that was a good thing. So I wanted to be in, not out, and that's how I came to know Jesus. It was later on that I began to realize that I needed to do more than just belong to Jesus and have Jesus belong to me. I needed to begin to build a life that Jesus lived in and through. And so that began a journey of discovery. I have to admit, in those earlier years, it was still a lot of oughtness. You ought to do this. You ought to do that. It was my later high school years that I all of a sudden came to this realization that God loves me, and that I have an opportunity of having a love relationship with God, and that really began to turn things around for me. I was never a bad kid, but just did the things I needed to do to get by, and it was at that point that I began to feel that stirring in my heart that I wanted to serve Him, and I wanted to do what He wanted me to do, but not because I ought to, but because I loved Him and He loved me. So that was that love relationship that has just continued to be a key factor in my life.
Wow, that did you continue in a German speaking church like up through high school, or?
Yeah, I think that what often happens in very ethno language churches is they hired a youth worker that was English. Eventually, like Sunday school classes became English. The
Sure.
main service was still German, and then there was a switch over. It is no longer, right now. So I'm 66, so we're talking a few years back. It's no longer German today, but that is definitely the roots. You still have Bruno and Siegfried and Hilda and all those folks in that church.
Amazing, amazing. So, was there a call to ministry somewhere in there?
Yeah, I think that when I got to my later high school years, I began to think, what do I want to do with my life? And I loved math. I loved sciences. I didn't care much for English. Had a bit of a speech impediment that was kind of always sort of there. And so I thought, for a year, I'm going to go to Bible school. And so I went to a Bible school for a year, and 1 year went to 2 years, went to 3 years, went to 4 years. And in those years, I felt very much affirmed by this community of faith that I was around. And I began to sense the Lord telling me that He wanted me to not go into sciences, but to go into ministry. And I was flabbergasted. Like, I could tell God all kinds of reasons why Harry Kelm should not go
Mhm.
into full-time ministry. I mean, it's just, I could list them. And yet God was persistent. I mean, he kept giving me opportunities to serve. He gave me people that came around me and encouraged me. And so through those 4 years, I began to realize through missions trips, through camp, leading camp programs, that God had some plan for me that included me being in ministry and vocationally in ministry. So went to seminary,
Where did
and
you go to seminary?
I went to Bethel Seminary in Minneapolis.
Okay.
It was not our conference school. Our conference school was in Sioux Falls, but it was closer to home. It was closer to Milwaukee, and there were some health problems in my family of origin. I felt like I needed to be closer in case I needed to get home. for some reason. So that's what happened. And at Bethel, there's a cornerstone, and it's Isaiah 6:8. Whom shall we send? Who will go for us? And Isaiah says, "Here I am, send me." And when I first visited, I just stopped there and I thought, "Oh boy, here it goes. Here I am, send me." And that's how it started. There was no big explosion of any sort. It was just God continuing to move me in a certain direction, nudging and consistently persistent. And that's how I ended up in ministry.
Well, I know that's a solid school, and it sounds like you were you were being nudged, but you were taking the steps.
Yeah, I feel very humbled by that, because I still do not see myself as someone that should be, or the should, could, would stuff. But it's all about God. I mean, when God calls, God always equips. And I feel like if God would never lead me to a place where he wouldn't provide for me. And so that's been kind of my thing, that if God wants me to do something, I'm willing to do it, because I love him and I know he loves me, and he's going to provide for me. And that's been the case.
Well, that's a great testimony there. So you graduated from seminary. What was your first ministry placement situation?
Yeah. Hutchinson, Minnesota, straight west of the Twin Cities, about, it would be about an hour to an hour and a half. And I was the pastor of a church of about 45 people, lived in the parsonage across the street. Found out later that they were wondering if they should close their doors, and they thought, well, you know what? Let's give this guy a chance. He's young. We don't have to pay him much. But
Were
that's
you
where
married? Were you married at the time?
Yeah, I got married in my last year in seminary, and so Cindy, my wife, and I, we headed there. And ironically, this church was the first church of my father-in-law. My father-in-law is a pastor in the North American Baptist Conference. And so my wife lived in the same house as a little girl that she lived as the pastor's wife.
No way.
Yeah, yeah. And it's in the NAB, the North American Baptist Conference, you're constantly finding out, like, there's all these intersections of, oh,
Sure.
that's your uncle. Oh, that's my cousin. That kind of stuff.
How was that for her, moving back to her childhood home?
Well, she told me early on when we were dating that there's no way that she wanted to marry a pastor, and so it's been part of the journey for her too. But she's always been my greatest supporter, and she's always been kind of the wind in my sails. We made this decision that that her call was to be my partner, and I was her partner, and so she didn't feel the need to necessarily play the organ, or do kind of the pastor wife things. She was there to support me, and I always felt that.
Well, walk us through what happened. So you're in Hutchinson, Minnesota. Then what?
Yeah, we were there 8 years. Then we went to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I took a church there in Sioux Falls, and our conference's seminary is there, and so started my DMin and got my DMin while I was in Sioux Falls. So I got my Doctor of Ministry there, and there too, God just continued to show up. That was my first experience of having staff and having, hiring staff and working with staff. And, those are the worship wars years. So
Yeah.
we had some of that going on, but those folks, God has just blessed us with churches that have been so supportive of us and very much have fed into us. And that was, Sioux Falls was a great place too, and our family kept growing during this time. So those are the years of having kids and enjoying what it meant to have toddlers running around the house.
How many kids?
We have three. We have our oldest daughter lives in Madison, Wisconsin. Our son and his family lives here in Edmonton, and our youngest daughter and her family live in San Diego. So we're kind of spread out.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and that's, when I was going into ministry, that was sort of the thing to expect. That was sort of what happens in ministry. You go from one place to another. It's still the case sometimes, but maybe a little less so today. There's more desire to be kind of in a location, and
Yeah.
so it's just what I expected.
What happened after Sioux Falls?
Yeah, I went to Vancouver, Washington, suburb of Portland, and we used to say Vancouver, not BC, Washington, not DC. That was the big saying there. We were there, took our family and moved it all the way across the country. Up to then, we'd been primarily in the Midwest, and now we were more on the West Coast. And JD, I learned a lot of things in Vancouver, primarily in the genre of maybe you shouldn't have done that, if you know what I mean. And
that's my entire life.
Well, and God continues to work, but the intention that I had was, I'm going to be here 25, 30 years, and it was 5 years. And it was I learned a lot, and I hope the church learned also things, but God needed to teach me some lessons, more about trusting in Him and trusting more in Him than in my own efforts. I had two churches under my belt at that point, and I kind of thought I knew what I was doing, and I think I might have even been able to say, hey, I can pretty much minister in any context. I can figure it out. And I was, God needed to knock me down a couple of points. And
Well, if you want to get knocked down a little bit, come to the West Coast, north. I would say north of Fresno, all the way up. You're going to learn some things you never realized were actually happening in the world. So.
And I still appreciate some of those things I learned there. And so those are life lessons. We moved from there to Calgary, Alberta, which is, you not only move churches, you move countries. And so that was our ministry there. And I can say that Grace Baptist in Calgary, they had gone through some difficult times, and they were hurting. I kind of was hurting, and what happened is God brought us together, and we healed together. And so it was 15 years. It was just a blessing to be there. And once again, God continued to provide. And so that was our last ministry. So altogether, 37 years in pastoral ministry.
Wow, that's incredible faithfulness. And now you're, is your title president? Is it supreme leader, or what is it?
It's executive director.
Executive director of the NAB.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us, number one, how in the world did you get that job? And just give us a quick bit on the NAB and your vision.
Yeah. Well, the former executive director resigned. I had been involved in various leadership places in the North American Baptist Conference leadership over the years, and I just served as kind of the chair of the board. And there's a position on the board that's the past chair. You sit on there for another 3 years after you've been chair, so that you provide some continuity and support. It was when I was past chair that the former executive director resigned, and help them in the transition during those times, I was asked by a number of people, "Hey, are you going to put your name in?" And I said, "No, are you kidding me?" I said, first of all, the NAB doesn't want to have a guy that's wife just left him. And they went, "What?" And I said, "That's what would happen if my wife found out I'd do that." And I was on the phone and I said that once, and it was during COVID. So we're spending a lot of time on phones and Zooms.
Yeah.
And my Cindy said to me, "I just heard what you said. Have you ever asked me what I thought?"
Mm.
And I said, "No, I guess I didn't." And she said, "Well, why don't you ask me and let me pray about it, and then I'll tell you." And so I did. And she came back and said, I feel like you have that God is at least giving me the feeling that you should apply. And so I did. But JD, it's one of those things where you apply and you keep thinking, okay, I'm going to apply. A lot of people like me. I've been a kind of a loyal NABer.
Sure.
They're going to at least let me get through the first round. They don't want to hurt my feelings, But so every Zoom call I had, I was sort of expecting that it would be it's been great. You're a good guy.
No thanks.
Yeah. And then it was this kind of shock that they actually thought that God was leading them to me. JD, I love the church. I have a love for the church. I love the church I was in. And so I thought to myself, really? Like, is this really from you, Lord? But I was involved in setting up this process. I knew this search committee. I knew that they were good people and godly people, and that they had been praying so it's this idea of I believed in the process. I believed that God was in the process. And so here I go, me saying, "Here I am, Lord, send me."
Mhm.
It was that same feeling of for this time God has something that he wants to do through me. He wants to do something in me. And so it's been 5 years now since that moment. And yeah, it's been.
How's it been? How's the 5 years been?
It has been. I have really appreciated seeing God working at the church level, but also at the level of groups of churches working together. And I have loved seeing the church planters of the North American Baptist Conference. I have to tell you, JD, when I first started, one of the first things I went to was this gathering of church planters, and I was like, see how that goes. Sometimes the church planters have a bit of a reputation of being a little bit wild and yeah, just a little bit off center, a little.
Off center.
And I have to tell you, I was so well accepted. I was so well loved that I thought to myself, praise God. Like I am willing to be wrong about this, because they reached out to me. They loved on me. They got to know me, and that's been my experience with church planters, with missionaries, with those folks that are kind of at that place where they're being supported by churches. And I had, as a pastor, a chance to be involved in some church planting efforts, and also in supporting missionaries. But it gave me a chance to see God at work. At the same time, it's been a tough 5 years. There's the post-COVID. There's been lots of, almost a hostility and antagonism that is really close to the surface. And I think oftentimes people will want to find someone to kind of take or to be frustrated against, because there's lots of frustrations in life today, and it happens to be kind of um, the groups that maybe churches are a part of. And so I've had to deal with a lot of different conflict and different situations like that, much more so than I thought I would. But God has continued to say to me that He wants me to keep doing what I'm doing. And so I'm still at it.
Well, well, I would say that being accepted by the church planters and that environment has a lot to do with Stu Streeter and
Oh,
just what
man.
he brings to the table. So proud of Stu and just love him and what he's doing with the church planters. So wanted a little plug there for Stu.
Oh, yeah.
Stu,
Yeah. Yeah.
Stu, if you're listening to this, you got to buy lunch next time. But when you're the executive director, that's like the complaint department, right? I mean, isn't that because people can't get mad at, there's a lot of people that can't get mad, that they are mad at, but they can't really vent on them. So where do they look? And pastors can look at, oh, well, there's Harry. He should have all this fixed,
Yeah. And thanks for that shout out for Stu. I have such an incredible executive team that I work with. It's yeah, that they're a blessing. Stu has been nothing but encouraging to me. Um, and and I'm seeing God's movement. So that's the the flip side of
Right.
some of that conflict resolution stuff. God continues to work, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of it.
Well, tell us what is the NAB, where it came from, and just a quick bit about your vision for maybe the next 5.
Yeah, the North American Baptist Conference used to be known as the German Baptist Conference. It was 1851 was when it started. You had these waves of German immigrants coming from Europe after the wars, World War I and II, and they they were looking for people that they could communicate with, and they found other Germans, and they came together, and it was that kind of community connection. And there was a kind of a branch that went up through Canada, branch that went down to the United States. Hence, we're binational. We have been binational. We are binational, and we're hoping to stay binational. We believe that not necessarily being in just one country continues to emphasize the fact that we are citizens of God's kingdom. We happen to
Sure.
live in United States or Canada, but we are called to be a people of God, and so that's the beauty of the NAB. From its very beginning, the NAB was brought together for fellowship, community, and ministry. They decided very early to not be a denomination, to call themselves a conference, because it was going to be a gathering of equals. So the sense of, our German forefathers came from the old country, where there was a lot of stratification of churches and what was the state church. And so they really wanted to make sure that there was that sense of not elitism. And so that's a part we have always sought to reach out to our neighborhoods. We've sought to be a conference that raises up leaders, sends missionaries, plants churches, and that's still what we do. Those are the still the passions that fuel us as a conference of churches. 400 in Canada and the United States, 1/3 in Canada, 2/3 in the United States.
Okay, great. So you're on the road a lot.
Yeah, and we serve virtually, so our whole executive team is virtual. We get together 3 times a year, but we see each other at events, and yeah, do a fair bit of traveling.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for what you're doing there. In many many ways, it's not the most Pluto-filled deal when you're the executive director and you're trying to herd the church planting cats as well as everything else that's going on. But I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your emphasis with Stu on church planting as well. That's a big deal.
And I believe that um, God is planting within a lot of folks this desire to be sending churches and to be planting churches, to be revitalizing churches. I think that's the focus as I look down the road, that we're going to continue to see churches that have a passion for having plants come out of them, and but also the potential of ethnic works like languages that are spoken. The diaspora that is happening all over the world is also happening in North America, where you have folks coming from various countries, and they're planting churches or going to churches and being planted out of churches as a separate church. So I see a lot of movement that continues to happen in this the planting of churches, but also this idea of connecting with your neighbor, connecting with the community that you're in, and having a difference. When you think about JD, when I started in a German church where I could probably count on one hand in 20 years or 18 years how many visitors there were. Because why would you go to a German church if you didn't speak German? Um, and yet the movement of the North American Baptist Conference is this idea of, we believe God is on mission in our community and we want to join him there, whether it's in multiplying ministries or multiplying churches. We really believe that God is at work in having us make a difference in the people that are around us. So, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, well, you've been doing this a while. Give us a leadership lesson, leadership tip.
Well, I said earlier I'm 66, so I mean, I don't think it's negative to say I have more past than I have future. But I also believe it ain't over till it's over. And uh, God meets me each day and says, "Come, follow me. Come this way." I think that the leadership lesson that I sense is something important for people to consider is that in this environment today of a bit more hostility and antagonism, so often we want to decide when it comes to people around us who we are meeting. Uh, who are you? Are you one of us, or are you one of them?
Uh-huh.
And we make these judgments, and so often the judgment then leads to a certain behavior, a certain viewpoint, a certain way of treating someone. And I think that I would just want to challenge people to say, are you on God's side? It's the one side that I want to be on. It's God's side in Jesus. I want to love God with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and I want to love my neighbor as myself. I think that's the way of Jesus. And I think that for me, when I've ventured out in leadership, the question I have always asked myself is, am I walking the way of Jesus? Is what I am saying, is what I am doing, something that follows with who Jesus is and how Jesus has impacted my life? I think the danger today is that we can run to a position, or even run to sort of this sense of, let's just get her done. Let's do it in any way possible. And I think there needs to be a higher standard for us as believers. We need to do the way of Jesus. We need to walk the way of Jesus, and we need to love God and love others. I I have this little story that just a few weeks ago, I was greeting at my church. Every once in a while, I get to be a greeter. Isn't that the greatest? And a little boy had attached himself to me. I knew his family, but not real well. And they asked me, "Is it okay if he stands at the door and greets with you?" And I said, sure, So people were coming in and they were greeting us, and they loved the little guy that was next to me, and they would greet him especially. And at one point he turned to me and he said with this smile on his face, people really like me here. And I thought to myself, wow, that's the message, that we have a place. It might not necessarily be tied to a building, but we have an opportunity for someone to know the love of God and Jesus, that God really likes them, and that God wants what is best for them. And so that's, I think, just to encourage people to say, just keep on. There's some tough stuff, but keep loving God, keep loving people, and make sure that we continue to stay on the side that brings life change and transformation. That's for me. That's what I got, man.
That's a great word, a great lesson. And from what I know about you, Harry, is that people really like you.
Yeah.
Even if they're giving you a hard time, they really like you here. So
I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm humbled by that. Yeah, thank you.
there's a passage in Acts 11. Uh, I believe it's no, it's not Acts 11. It's Acts 8, after the Philip stuff, where it just says that the disciples were meeting together, and even though they were, I think this is the New Living Translation, it says something along the lines of, even though they were a little bit in awe of these believers, the people really liked them. Um, and I think there's something about that. Sometimes we think as Christians, we got to make sure people don't like us.
That's
Which
right.
I'm not sure that's the goal. There's enough stuff not to like. So yeah, keep up keep that up. Keep being likable. I'm praying for you regularly. Just such a privilege for Excel to be partners with NAB, and we really appreciate you. Really appreciate you telling your story today.
Thanks for having me, JD. You're doing an incredible work, and it's a work that hasn't just started. You've been at this a while, and you have made a difference. And Excel has made a difference. So we praise God for you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.